Welcome to Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. We have an interesting show on tap because it sounds like Jevon Holland wants to return to the Miami Dolphins in NFL free agency. He is an impending free agent and is one of the top free agents available. We'll talk about if this is something Miami should do in terms of bringing back Jevon Holland and why it might not be a good idea to bring him back. But before we do that, make sure you be a real one and help us and share today's video. I want to spread the message of Dolphins Today and grow this community and channel, and the best way to do that is sharing the video to friends, family members, coworkers, social media. Can we get more eyeballs on the channel? And if we do that, well, we create more of a fun community here of Dolphins fans. So help me out by sharing today's video. Let's get into it because Barry Jackson reported this a couple days ago, saying that impending free agent Jevon Holland said he would love to return next season, and there have been conversations with the Dolphins and his agent, whether the Fins carve out the cap space, blah, blah, blah. But the first part is the most intriguing part here. Jevon Holland would love to return to the Fins, and then there has been conversations between Chris Grier and his agency, which I find interesting because, sure, maybe they have one last chance to bring him back and re-sign him before you get into the offseason, but I don't want to bring him back. I've been actually very open about this. I think it would be a massive mistake to re-sign Jevon Holland in NFL free agency. The Dolphins do not have a lot of cap space. Jevon Holland is a top 5 free agent this upcoming offseason and has not had a season to where I would want to pay him the money that he is likely going to command on the open market. And when you look at his numbers, this is his final year of his rookie contract, and he was so much better in his first 2 seasons with Miami than the last 2 seasons as a Dolphin, because he's had some injury issues arise over the past 2 seasons, only playing 12 games, only playing 15 games this year after he plays this final week against the New York Jets. But when you really look at the numbers, you use your eye test as well, he has regressed every single year of his career, and that is not a good thing. He was looked at as a top 5 safety entering this season. I expected him to have a massive year under Anthony Weaver because you saw that type of scheme and system in Baltimore use their safety so effectively. Marcus Williams, Kyle Hamilton, and I thought Holland was going to take that next step forward, and he hasn't. He's actually declined a little bit. Maybe you can say he needs to get used to the Anthony Weaver scheme, but I thought he was going to be able to pick it up right away and take that step like a Kyle Hamilton, and it has not been the case. And we're going to talk more about what he can get on the open market in free agency, if the Dolphins should bring him back, and how they might look to replace him if you don't bring him back. But let me know what your thoughts are on the matter. I just told you, I don't think it's worth bringing Jevon Holland back for the price tag that he's going to command, but do you want to bring Jevon Holland back? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. It's the pinned comments. You get hit with a YouTube ad break. Scroll down, let it play, and answer the question. Type Y for yes, type N for no. To me, the Dolphins are projected right now to have about $5 million in cap space. But after contract restructures, potential trades, releases, I think they'll end up having anywhere between $25 and $40 million in cap space in free agency. And I don't think Jevon Holland would be a good allocation of resources to bring him back, because I thought that he could get $18.5 million per season over 4 years in free agency. Well, Pro Football Focus has him as the 3rd best free agent this upcoming offseason, only trailing T. Higgins and Trey Smith, the offensive lineman from Kansas City. And the projection for his contract, according to Pro Football Focus, was 4 years, $98 million, about $57 million guaranteed, which came out to 19.5 on an annual average basis. I think Jevon Holland is a fine young player. He was a good draft pick, all things considered, in the 2nd round 4 years ago. But is he worth allotting damn near $20 million per season on your cap? I don't know. And especially when you have an aging roster that needs a lot of help to get to that next level in the AFC, and you don't have a lot of cap space to do it, I don't know if it's a good use of that money to give it to Jevon Holland to retain him. If you were a team like the New England Patriots and had over $100 million in cap space, then sure, I could get behind bringing Jevon Holland back at $19.5 million per season and that be his cap hit. But right now, I don't think that makes a lot of sense whatsoever. And when you look at some other free agents that the Dolphins could sign or re-sign who are leaving their team, I think it would make a lot more sense to use that money that way. But make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we have content every day surrounding the Miami Dolphins. We'll be the number one spot this offseason for Dolphins coverage, but we still have a game to potentially win this Sunday. Make sure you subscribe for that because we will be live for that game and we'll have you covered for the playoff potential run. All right, I wanted to showcase some key Miami free agents, and obviously Jevon Holland is on this list, but for the sake of the other list, I wanted to take him off of it. The top 8 free agents for Miami outside of Jevon Holland: Calais Campbell, Tyrell Dodson, Emmanuel Ogbah, Benito Jones, Anthony Walker Jr., Tyler Huntley, Cater Cohen, Deshaun Ham. And I got to be honest, the Dolphins, this is a good thing, don't have that many key pieces leaving them in free agency if they sign none of them back. The big hitters would be Ogbah, Benito Jones, Campbell, Kohu, and then obviously Jevon Holland as well. And so you don't have a ton of spots that you absolutely need to replace. But when you think of some of these players, I think a lot of us Dolphins fans would like to bring some of them back, like a Calais Campbell if he wanted to. Dodson could be a good number 2 linebacker next year or a third guy. Ogbah as that 4th edge rusher potentially. And Tyler Huntley as the backup quarterback. I think you could legitimately sign Calais Campbell back if he wanted to return, Tyrell Dodson, backup Tyler Huntley, Emmanuel Ogbah, and maybe even Benito Jones. You could legitimately get those 5 players back in free agency for the same cap hit as Jevon Holland. Do I think it's guaranteed? No, but a lot of those players might get the vet min, and if they get the vet min, you could bring them all back for a combination of $22 million against the cap. Yeah, I'd rather have the 4 or 5 guys back on this Dolphins roster than just Jevon Holland. And the two aren't mutually exclusive by any means, but it's just another example of how you can use the money that you would shell out to Holland that is pretty pricey to make a overall better roster that might help your team as well. We'll talk more on Jevon Holland coming up in just a second, but we are sponsored by Prize Picks, the number 1 daily fantasy sports platform in North America, and get started today as the playoffs are heating up. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 2 correct entries. It's the best place to get real money on sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. And when you sign up today, you can get $50 instantly after you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which players aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long. And you can play football, you can play basketball, you can combine them, you could customize the way you play. I have a 2-player entry for the final week of the regular season. More than on Michael Penix and more than on Geno Smith passing yards. 210.5 for the lefty, 255.5 for Geno Smith. Like I mentioned, you can take players like this. You can do flex play, power play, any way you want to play Prize Picks. It's why it's my favorite daily fantasy sports platform. So download the app and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, let's get more into Jevon Holland now because I think I want to show you guys why I would not bring him back more. Now, obviously, I mentioned a lot of the financials of it, and we showed his stats on a macro perspective. But when you look more at the advanced numbers that really make or break these players in the NFL, they do not favor Jevon Holland, and they will not help his case when he's negotiating with teams in NFL free agency. Specifically, the tackling, because this has been the most frustrating part for me, and I know a lot of you guys as well have been frustrated with it by what you guys say during our live shows and in the comment section. Jevon Holland, I don't want to call him out and say he's soft, but he simply just is not a good tackler. You see his Pro Football Focus tackling grade. It's 45.1. He has missed 12 tackles this season in the 14 games played, and he has a missed tackle percentage of 18.5, which is one of the highest in the NFL in terms of safeties, and it's the highest of his career by a large stretch. The biggest season in the first, or the biggest missed tackle percentage in the first 3 years of his career came in his second season, 13.5. So it's jumped up a full 5%. It's the worst season of his career in terms of tackling, but I also consider it the worst season of his career just in general, which might say, well, if this is the worst season of his career, you might still want to bring him back. But he has not been good in coverage either. And when you really think about his lack of covering and the inability to tackle, why would you pay someone like Jevon Holland $20 million per season, basically? Because he's giving up a QB rating of 107.3 when being targeted. He's allowed 2 touchdowns through the air. The yardage is fine. It's actually 32nd ranked in football, so he hasn't been cooked for a lot of yards, and the completion percentage is only low 60s. So that's fine. But it's more or less the QB rating and his inability to take the ball away in the air. Only 2 BBUs, no INTs. And he did have a nice little forced fumble in week 1 of the season, but that was on the ground. I don't think he's a bad football player by any stretch of the imagination. And I want to reiterate this point one more time. Holland is a very solid young player. But can the Dolphins at this point in their build, with their cap situation, really allot $20 million? And let's just say 18.5. Let's look low ball it, team-friendly contract. Can they even allot $18.5 million per season to Jevon Holland? I don't think you can, especially when you have to rebuild your interior defensive line with youth. You have to rebuild your interior offensive line. Find a second linebacker. Maybe get some depth at corner. Like, there are just so many different things that the Dolphins need to address this offseason if they want to get back to a legit competitive stage in the AFC. And I don't see any pathway that they get to that point if they pay Jevon Holland a massive contract after what we have seen this year. So if I'm going to tell you this, I have to come up with a better solution to find a better replacement or a better safety tandem in Miami, because Jordan Poyer ain't come back either. Well, if you include Jevon Holland, these are the top 5 free agent safeties out there. Justin Reed, Julian Blackmon, Jeremy Chinn, and Trayvon Morag are the top 4 outside of Jevon Holland, in my opinion. I am unsure on what these 4 would command on the open market, but I will be honest, the 3 here of Blackmon, Chinn, and Morag do intrigue me, because Chinn's a physical, big safety who tackles. I think he can get physical and defend tight ends well. Is he going to be the rangy safety that can defend in the slot and defend wide receivers? No, not really, but he can defend linebackers, and he's not afraid to tackle it either. Blackmon and Morag are more of those standard cover safeties that can range, they show the speed. That is one example of how you can replace Holland with a cheaper option for agency. Or you could turn your eyes to the draft, where there is an absolute stud from Georgia that will likely get drafted in the range where you're picking in the first round in Malachi Starks. I am an unbelievable fan of Starks. He just has a knack for getting his nose around the football. He tackles, he defends, he is always around the ball. I love that. Or you can look towards day 2 and day 3 of the NFL draft, like Kamari Ramsey, Xavier Watts, Sebastian Castro, Kevin Winston Jr. There's so many different ways you can attack replacing Jordan Poyer and Jevon Holland if you ultimately decided to let them go. I just wanted to show you the top 5 guys, in my opinion, in the draft, as well as the top 5 NFL free agents. But let me know, how would you replace Jevon Holland? If you had to replace Jevon Holland, he doesn't come back, how would you do it? In free agency or the NFL draft? You saw some of the names that could be his replacement. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. My final thoughts. I think the best way to attack the safety room, because remember, you're going to have to replace Jevon Holland if he leaves, which I'll let him leave, and you have to replace Jordan Poyer because he's been bad and I would not bring him back. I think signing a low-end or mid to low-end safety and drafting a safety on day 2 of the NFL draft is probably the best way to go. So if you're asking me, if you can pry Trayvon Morag, if you could pry Jeremy Chinn away from the Raiders and Washington Commanders respectively, grab one of them, draft a Sebastian Castro, a Kevin Winston Jr. on day 2, either in the 2nd round or the 3rd round of this NFL draft, and then you could have a safety room of the veteran you signed, the rookie you drafted on day 2, plus Patrick McMorris, who all reports indicate that the Dolphins really like him, the 6th round pick out of Cal. He can be your 3rd safety next season. or you can have the rookie be the third guy. Either way, I think that's the best way to revamp the safety room. You need to get younger. You need to get more athletic. You need to get better tacklers in that room and kind of overhaul that mindset in the secondary. And I think letting Jevon Holland walk and doing this strategy is probably the best way to do it. All right, that'll do it for today's episode of Dolphins Today. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you have notifications turned on because we are going to cover the Miami Dolphins every single day, no matter if they win tomorrow and make the postseason or not. So make sure you join the channel. Make sure you have notifications turned on as well.